Hello! It's CEO here. Today, we will be figuring out which Animal Crossing villager is the absolute rarest to have on your island. Stick around to the end of the video to find out who is the rarest villager in New Horizons. While it seems no one can agree on just how many villagers there are, most Animal Crossing websites out there say there are 397 villagers total. This number includes the 8 new villagers introduced into New Horizons and the 6 villagers from the Sanrio collab. When it comes to rarity of villagers, there are a few different ways we can look at it depending on which method of villager acquisition you use. And in this video, I'll go over rarity via villager hunting, Amiibo cards, and empty plot autofills, as these are the only ways to get villagers onto your island currently. Villager hunting is by far the most popular way to get villagers, but some are harder to get than others using this method. Villager hunting is basically jumping from Mystery Island to Mystery Island using Nook Mile tickets. These islands will populate a random villager if you currently have an empty plot on your island. The way the game randomly generates a villager is by species and then by specific villager. Since there are 35 species, there is a 1 in 35 chance any of the species will get selected. Then the game pulls a specific villager within that species. So for example, if you wanted to find Bluebear, you would have a 1 in 35 chance to get the bear cub species, and then a 1 in 16 chance to pull a specific bear cub. If you multiply these numbers together, you have a 1 in 560 chance, or a 0.17% chance of finding Bluebear on any mystery island at any given time. That's a pretty low chance of finding Bluebear, or any cub for that matter, on a mystery island. This method means that the rarity of the villager depends entirely on how many villagers that species has. If you're looking for a cat villager, there is a 1 in 23 chance to pull a specific cat, since there are 23 cats total. Multiply that by 1 in 35, and then you only have a 1 in 805, or a 0.12% chance of finding any cat, including Raymond. And since these cats are one of the most popular species in the game, finding any specific cat is super rare. On the other hand, there are only 3 octopuses, in the game: Marina, Octavian, and Zucker. This means there's a 1 in 3 chance of one of the octopi being selected. Multiply that by 1 in 35, and you have a 1 in 105, or a 0.95% chance of finding your desired octo. The rarities of villagers differ widely, but you can easily calculate the rarity of the villager you want via villager hunting by looking up how many villagers are in your desired species, then multiplying that number by 35. Then simply put a 1 under that number, flip it, and that is the chance you have of finding your specific villager. If you want to calculate the percentage, multiply that number by 100, and don't forget your parentheses. I also made a free villager rarity calculator for anyone to use, which will be linked in the description. Somehow this video turned into a math lesson, but when Animal Crossing is involved, the math doesn't seem as bad. Long story short, if you are villager hunting, a species with more villagers, like cats and bear cubs, are rarer, while species with less villagers, like octopi, are more common and easier to find. If you're concerned your dreamy villager is too hard to obtain with villager hunting, there are 2 more ways to get villagers. Amiibo cards are by far another popular choice for getting your dreamy villagers. Amiibo cards are trading cards released in 2015 that contain an NFC chip which carry the data of a specific villager. You can then scan in the Amiibo card into your New Horizons game via the kiosk and resident services, and then they will appear in your campsite. After you do this process 3 times, the villager will ask to move onto your island. If you want more details about this move-in process with Amiibo cards, I made an entire video about it which will be linked. Amiibo cards series 1 through 4 each contain 100 cards, with 83 being regular villagers and 17 being special characters. Series 5 Amiibo cards were introduced a few years later and include 50 more villagers. Since special characters cannot move in, we will only be looking at the regular villagers. This means there are 382 regular villager Amiibo cards that allow you to move in villagers virtually instantly, without the need to villager hunt, which can take hours. Murphy? He has an Amiibo card. Tangy? She definitely has an Amiibo card. But Raymond? He does not have an Amiibo card. The Amiibo cards unfortunately do not account for the 8 new villagers that were introduced in New Horizons, including Raymond, Judy, Audie, Sherb, Dom, Sid, Renee, and Megan. While we did get restocks of Series 1 through 4 Amiibo cards, there was no sight of any new villagers included in these packs. This means the only way to get those villagers is to villager hunt, which again can take a long time. But there are rumors that new Amiibo cards will be released that include these 8 new villagers. The evidence we have for some new Amiibo cards is a little complicated, but I will break it down for you. Each Amiibo card and figurine has an ID attached to it. Typically, all the IDs go in numerical order, with some gaps left in the sequence for new Amiibos. Recently released Amiibos, including Cat Mario and Cat Peach, used up 2 IDs in the middle of the sequence that were previously unused, 934 and 935. The 3 Monster Hunter Amiibos that were also recently released have IDs of 1039, 1040, and 1041. You may notice there is a huge gap between the Amiibo IDs, 103 to be exact. And since we know the IDs go in numerical order, Nintendo must be saving these 103 IDs for Amiibo that have not yet been released. And what series of Amiibo would need such a large amount of IDs? Animal Crossing Amiibo Cards. This is strong evidence that new Amiibo cards could be on their way very soon. Of course, we could be wrong, and Nintendo could just be holding onto these codes for other Amiibo figurines. But 103 is a pretty large gap to reserve for sets of Amiibo that typically release in groups of 2 and 3. Perhaps this means that a new set of Amiibo cards will contain our 8 new villagers from New Horizons, which would be great since that would mean villager hunting would not be the only way to get these rare villagers anymore, making them much easier to get. But until we get confirmation of additional Amiibo cards, we can only discuss the rarity of villagers we already have Amiibo cards of. In North America, Amiibo card packs came with 6 cards each, including 1 special character card guaranteed. Other than that, it was completely random which villagers would be included in your packs. However, this means species that contain more villagers, in theory, have a higher chance of being found in a pack, since there are simply more of them to be found. And species that have less villagers have a lower chance of being found in a pack because there are less of them. This formula is basically the opposite of how villager hunting works. For example, since there are 23 cat villagers, you have a higher chance of finding a cat amiibo in your card pack. The math works like so. 1/5, since there are 5 normal villagers per amiibo card pack, multiply that by 23 over 382 for cats, since there are 23 cat villagers, and 382 villagers we can choose from. And that gives us a 23 in 1,910 chance of finding any cat in an amiibo pack, which comes out to 1.2%. That might seem low, but let's calculate the same percentage for octopi villagers. 1/5 times 3 over 382, and we use 3 because there are a total of 3 octopi villagers. We do the math, and that is a 3 in 1,910, or 0.157% chance of finding any octopus villager in a pack of amiibo cards. This means the chance of finding an octopus, or any villager that belongs to a small species, has a much smaller chance of being found in an amiibo card pack than a villager that belongs to a large species, such as a cat or bear cub. Long story short, if you're looking for a specific villager when you buy sealed amiibo card packs from the store, species with more villagers, like cats and bear cubs, are more common, while species with less villagers, like octopi, are much harder to find. We just had a reprint of amiibo cards, but they are sold out almost everywhere, and again, very hard to come by. So until we get a reprint of amiibo cards, or you're willing to shell out some serious dough for new amiibo card packs, you won't really have to worry about amiibo card villager rarities. If there is a specific villager you want, you are better off just buying the individual card, whether authentic from eBay or homemade from Etsy. But there is one set of amiibo cards we have not yet talked about: the Sanrio villagers. These 6 adorable villagers, Chai, Etoile, Toby, Marty, Chelsea, and Rilla, were introduced in 2016 as amiibo cards and only available in Japan. They were able to be scanned into Animal Crossing New Leaf and move into your town, and players were able to get all of their furniture items pictured on their amiibo cards. Homemade versions of these cards were easy to come by, so many players outside of Japan were able to get these villagers as well. Earlier in 2021, it was announced that Sanrio amiibo cards were going to be reprinted and released in North America for the first time, as well as in Europe. Many fans rejoiced as we were finally able to get these cuties onto our New Horizons islands. However, these cards sold out in minutes. Their release at Target was a mess. leading to scalpers getting their hands on more than the 2-pack limit and many fans out of luck. For those who were lucky enough to get the cards, it was devastating when we found out the villagers were not adoptable, meaning a player with the Sanrio cards could not scan in the villager, then get them to move out, then give them to another player. The villagers would simply disappear into the void. This knowledge, combined with the almost instantaneous sell-out of these cards, means the Sanrio villagers are some of the hardest villagers to get in New Horizons by far. And since you can't get them via villager hunting, if you can't get your hands on the cards, you're out of luck. Fortunately for players, the NFC information on the cards can be easily duplicated and put into homemade versions, leading to the creation of the homemade Sanrio card boom on various online shopping platforms. So if you're willing to pay, the Sanrio villagers, and any villager for that matter that has an Amiibo card, are easy to get. But if it wasn't for these homemade options, the Sanrio villagers would be near to impossible to get onto your island. There is one more way to get villagers in New Horizons, and that is with the dreaded Autofill. If a villager moves off your island and you don't do anything to fill the spot, the game will automatically fill the plot. This means any villager, excluding the villagers currently living on your island, and the Sanrio villagers, could move onto your island. If we take the total number of villagers, 397, and subtract 6 for the 6 Sanrio villagers, since you can only get them with Amiibo cards, then subtract 9 to account for the current villagers on your island, assuming you have a full island before the empty plot, then there are 382 potential villagers that can move onto your island. A 1 in 382 chance, or 0.26% chance, of getting a specific villager is pretty low. But with this method, you are guaranteed to get a villager. You just have no power to choose whatsoever, which is probably why many players dread the autofill, because there is a high chance you will get an ugly villager, or an uggo as we lovingly refer to them as. After all that math, you probably just want to know which villager is the rarest in the game. So I am proud to announce that the rarest villager is Raymond! We could have seen this coming. This also probably explains the insane amount of Raymond hype we experienced last year in the Animal Crossing community. Not only is Raymond a cat, which means you only have a 0.12% chance of finding him on a mystery island, he also does not have an Amiibo card, so you can't just go out and buy him and scan him in. The only way to get Raymond is through villager hunting. Maybe this finally explains why the Animal Crossing community lost their minds over this smug kitty cat. Let me know in the comments if your favorite villager is considered rare or not. My favorite villagers are Bluebear and Tangy, and since they are the villagers with one of the most species, they are definitely considered rare, so I'm very lucky I was able to get their Amiibo cards. Even though I have Bluebear's Amiibo card, I still went villager hunting for her and spent over 1,600 tickets looking for her. So maybe don't do that and just buy the Amiibo card. Or go villager hunting if you like the thrill of it. Either way, up to you. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.